Welcome to this week's edition of The Open Book with Amy and Tommy. It is so good to be getting into the fall season. Amy, I love that college football has started back. I love it when the weather is getting cooler out there and that we can just kind of get back into a different kind of rhythm. So that, and I hope that applies to what happens in church too, that we get in this new rhythm of doing Bible study together each week and then worshiping with the body of Christ. That is something that I think is essential to our life as Christians and growing in our faith. So I hope you make that a priority this
It
season.
it is, and I just want to jump in and add to
Yeah, go
that
for
thought. I also love this season. I love college football.
it.
I am back at high school football games on Friday
Yeah,
nights, like you have been
same.
for 100 years now, with
Yeah.
all of your boys going through marching band, and it's such a fun season. And this week we record on different days. This week we're recording on Thursday. And so last night was our Wednesday night kickoff.
Yeah.
And goodness, it was a
So good.
good night. It was such a joy to go into the dining room and smell the good food and just see tables full of people of all ages. And then I went down to the gym, which was just packed with kids who went to our two Agape Kids groups. And Tommy and I's kids went up to the youth, and Tommy led the chapel Bible study. And it was just, there is so much joy in being together and learning together and growing together and sharing life together. Like Tommy, I just really encourage you to make this a priority. It is such a joyful, wonderful thing to be in community with God's people.
But today we're going to be looking at the scripture text that we'll be using in the worship service for this Sunday. And it is a wonderful text that might be familiar to many of you. So, Amy, would you like to go ahead and start us off and read this?
I'll be glad to. Our text today is from Luke 15, verses 1 through 10. Now all the tax collectors and sinners were coming near to listen to Jesus. And the Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling and saying, "This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them." So Jesus told them this parable: Which one of you, having 100 sheep and losing one of them, does not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after the one that is lost until he finds it? When he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders and rejoices. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and neighbors, saying to them, "Rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep that was lost." Just so, I tell you, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous people who need no repentance. Or what woman, having 10 silver coins, if she loses one of them, does not light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? When she has found it, she calls together her friends and neighbors, saying, "Rejoice with me, for I have found the coin that I had lost." Just so, I tell you, there is joy in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks
Thanks be
be
to
to
God.
God.
Great text. Something that I think is very familiar to many of us. Uh, I want to just jump into this text in 15, verse 1, where it says, Now all the tax collectors and sinners were coming near to listen to him, to listen to Jesus. Uh, I go back just a little bit in the text, and if you go back to 25, you say, Now large crowds were traveling with him. And then he says some crazy things. Jesus does. Whoever comes to me and does not hate his father or mother, wife or brother has no place with me. Whoever does not carry the cross and follow me cannot be my disciples. So there's a part of me that wonders when you get to 15:1 if Jesus has called out the crowd with his teaching. All the people that he has told to be a follower of Jesus is not simple. It's not it involves following the way of Jesus. It involves taking up your cross and following him. And I think some people probably heard that and said, "Yeah, that's a little bit too difficult." But the people who found life in this story were those who were on the margins, those who didn't have it all together, those who maybe didn't have the families, maybe had even been shunned by their communities. The tax collectors and the sinners hung around because they thought maybe this message could bring them life. But they weren't the only ones there. Pharisees are there, the good church leaders. And I love the phrase, the Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling. These are the complainers. So there are people who are there listening to Jesus intently, trying to find a word of life. But those who are the most faithful, who are the church leaders, don't like who Jesus is hanging out with. And so they become the complainers.
Mm.
They become the ones that say, these people aren't good enough. And Jesus, because he's hanging out with them, doesn't seem to be towing the religious line. Instead, he's loving all people. So
Yeah.
I think when we get into that, this fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them. The Pharisees say that as a negative. I think Luke may be including it as a positive.
Mm-hmm.
It's all in how we come at that statement.
Mm-hmm.
So, what stood out to you in this text a little bit today?
So, I think so often when we read this text, we really pay attention. Well, we pay attention to what Jesus pays attention to um, as the shepherd and as the woman looking for what is lost. And what stood out to me this time, which is something that I don't remember ever really, really standing out to me quite so strongly, is the difference in the two, my response to the difference in the two, where, the first one with the 100 sheep, that doesn't quite make sense because, like, so you're gonna risk almost all of them for one. I mean, and we love when we see ourselves as the one, but, today, and as I read it today, when I think about it as, like, our children gathered in the gym, okay, if there is one, I wouldn't just be like, "Oh, just one, that's not so bad." So so,
Right.
I mean, so when you think about each as a precious and dear life, of course you go after the one. But I find myself really relating to this woman who just stops everything and searches. I think because I have been her, where it's like, where is that shirt? Or where is, and there's something that I've lost, and I just get so focused on finding it, even though I have others, but there's something. So I find, so today I found myself seeing the sheep as, and the shepherd as a little bit more impractical than the woman. And so kind of how we judge and what we value, except for then when I saw the sheep as a precious and beloved child, then that became different. But I think what I'm really considering, and what I keep coming back to in my mind is, um and is all the times and all the pictures I have of myself, like, wondering where something is, and looking for it. Um, and so seeing, picturing God, in that way, and not as someone who is careless, but as someone um, who cares for, and the thing that is lost is something that matters and has value. Um,
That value that's important. We Last night I was talking a little bit about person-centered language, and we have a tendency, and even in
mm,
this text we get it. Now the tax collectors and sinners. That
mhm.
It's an interesting way we talk about people. We often talk about the homeless or
Yeah,
the those uh, special needs kids we talked about last night a
right,
little bit, instead
right.
of starting out with people who don't have a home.
Hmm.
Or we were switching it last night and we were saying, kind of like you said, what if we rephrase this as beloved children of God who don't have a
Yeah.
home?
Yeah.
Beloved children of God who are struggling with sin or
Mhm.
some type of something.
Yeah.
Beloved children of God who are caught up in the empire.
Right.
Does that change how we see the other person?
Right. Right, because in this, now all tax collectors and sinners, well, there's a judgment in there, and there's implication in that versus now some people were coming near to listen
Right.
to Jesus. Then that takes away um that judgment, but it also tells us something. It doesn't have to be negative. I mean, it does tell us something that has value to me, and that is people who were drawn to Jesus and Jesus's message and people that Jesus welcomed um, into his presence and into his midst and helped. So, and that tells us something about the body of Christ and the commune and God's people.
That's right.
So,
And as you said, he
but
then
it's so
tells
easy
two
to slip into
parables.
judgment. Sorry.
Yeah. He tells two parables right after that, as you said, that just refer to that which is lost or that which is the tax collectors and sinners, to be specific,
Yeah.
are both extremely valuable. Just
Hmm.
because they might have not have made the decisions that you made
Hmm.
or that we think are the right decisions, they're still deeply valuable and are sought out by God to be reconciled to God and to one another.
Yeah.
And every time we identify them and divide ourselves from them, it actually, we're dividing ourselves from other children who are beloved. You're right. If we said now all these beloved children of God came near to listen to, and the tax collectors complained, this fellow welcomes all these beloved children of God,
Yeah.
we would think they were being crazy. So it really, I think the Pharisees see them as something and put a
Right.
label on them. And and I think Jesus is calling us to say every one of these people is valuable,
Hmm.
and we need to help them understand what it means to repent
Yes.
and guide them into this. And I think because Jesus loved them and recognized them as beloved children of God, they were attracted to Jesus.
Hmm. Yeah. So what's popping in my head now is, different seasons and generations. There's different um buzzwords and things that are highlighted in the education system. And one thing that's gotten a lot of attention the last 5 or so years is a is what's called growth mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means is we're all learning. And so that uses, instead of using language like I can't do that. I can't say my alphabet. I can't, write in cursive. I can't do that math problem. I can't multiply. Instead of saying that, you say, I can't do it yet, or I'm learning how to say the alphabet. I'm learning how to multiply. And I love that. And I've actually been having a lot of conversations about that with multiple people lately. It's coming up in different, my sister who's starting a new job and is having to learn new systems, my daughter
Mm-hmm.
who's starting high school and learning a whole new place and way of being things. And we've been talking about how hard it is, but also the shift that happens when we see ourselves as learners. And we're always learning, whether we're 14 or
Yes.
44, we
Yes.
are always learning. And I think that this applies to our life of faith. And we've talked about this. Baptism isn't the ending. Baptism is the beginning of a lifelong journey where none of us have everything figured out. And um, so when we can view ourselves and others as learners, as people who are trying to learn to be and love and act and speak like Jesus, then that changes everything. But if we focus on what people can't do or haven't done or aren't doing, then that's a different perspective, and that um that draws people out, and that dismisses that one sheep who is lost, rather than saying, here's someone who is in a different place than you, but is a part of the
Right.
fold.
Right. It's fascinating. I like that you bring in some education theory because I was thinking of the phrase moving away from a deficit
Yes.
mentality. Um, and the deficit mentality for the sheep might be, well, this one wandered away. You know, this is always what this sheep's gonna do.
Hmm.
It's just, they grew up this way. This is just who they are,
Yeah.
and there's not really a deep desire to go out and get them and bring them back into the fold because we know they'll just leave again.
Right.
And there's a deficit concept there. I think that's an interesting thing too, because I've been thinking a lot about reframing lately. What are the words I say to myself that actually become reality because I say them to myself?
Yeah.
Like, man, that's killing me. um, I might say that as a joke sometime, but if I say it too often, I start thinking of other things as draining life out of me that may not be. It just becomes how I describe them. Or I have this opportunity versus, man, I have to do this. Not just I have to, but I get to. Those kind of language switches often help me to kind of get more excited about something. When I think again about the sheep or the tax collectors and sinners, if I can reframe that a little bit to wanting to reach out to those who are if I think about it as reconciliation, that which is not a part of us, we need to bring back into be a part of us. That's what I'm hoping for. I think a lot of us, however, if the 99 sheep are here, I said this to the group I was with last night. I said, I can I can look out at all of you and think, man, where is everybody? Or I can say, wow, look, there's 50 people in here.
And and just look at one person and say, "I'm so glad to see you.
That's
I'm
right.
so glad you are here." And
Exactly.
and you say that 50 times or 150 times, but every time it's true because we can look and value each individual as a gift.
Yeah, I think that's right. We have to do that more and more. The way we love God is the way we love others,
Mhm.
and the way we love others shows us how much we love God, and
Yes.
that's a challenge.
That is
That often
because
means I don't love God like I say I love God.
right. Right, because, when we see this over and over, I mean, we're really challenged when we spend time with Jesus and Jesus is teaching that we are not loving wide enough, and we are not loving deep enough, and it to love the way that God
Mhm.
loves calls us out further and further and further, and not just to what is easy and not just to what is right here, but to continue. Jesus is always drawing that circle wider, um, and calling us
Yes.
out into the depths, and that is hard work. It is easy to love who is here. It is easy to
Yeah.
love who is like me. Um, but going to people who believe different, live different, are just different from me, well, that takes work, that requires something. Um, and yet we see, whether it's one of 100, one of 10, it doesn't matter if, there's always going out to
Mhm.
share that love.
And that's on all of us
That
to,
is.
to reach out. I know there can be a tendency to say, "Hey, this is Jesus going out to get that sheep. We'll let Jesus go out and get the sheep."
Mhm.
um, it's up to the Spirit to bring people to us,
Yeah.
kind of example. But I think you're right. The more we go out and we find where people are and let them know of our love and not our condemnation, then I think people might, I think they start understanding the value of community.
Yeah.
and the things that happen are not just what they see on the news or what they're worried about, but in the end, it's about how we love each other. Because again, church, it, here's my trigger frustration. So you'll just know this is there's a tendency for us to say we need to, or maybe we say something like, I don't know. Here's a negative terminology. I have some concerns about the church. Now, I don't know what that means because the
Right.
person that says that is the church
Right.
themselves. We think we kind of make this abstraction that if anything goes differently than we like, somebody wanders off, that then there's something wrong with some abstracted thing when the actual thing is you're the church, I'm the church, we're the church together. It's the church is people, and we meet together in this church house
Mm-hmm.
to learn how to love more people and who we need to go out and find and care for and bring back
Right.
into the fold, maybe.
Right.
Um, but there's a tendency to kind of be one of the Pharisees who grumble and say, "Man, I'm not sure I want these people coming. They've already kind of they've made their bed and left.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we get them back into the fold?"
Right.
I don't know.
Or they're not worthy where we're
Mhm.
ranking who is of value and who belongs. And well, you can be here, but you're not going to have the same privileges or opportunities that I'm going to have because you
Mhm.
haven't earned them.
Yeah.
Um so here is a gift, going back to our invitation to come and be a part of Sunday morning and Wednesday night Bible study. And you were alluding to this some, but I was thinking specifically for me of some examples of the gift of community and being in relationship with others helps us move out and helps us extend our love, because as we are, um then we connect with um people. Being in community with others can help us know how to love more and better. So,
Mhm.
and here's a couple of examples. Being a part of this church has made me love prisoners more
Mm.
because of um and I have not been a part of the Sunday afternoon, prison ministry group, but I hear the stories and I get the prayer requests. And so that stretches my love out to those women and men when we're able to do Kairos and other ministry. Um but but being a part of this community and hearing people that I care about talking about people in prison that they care about has helped me care about them more. My husband works in mental health, and so hearing stories of people that he cares for and interacts with helps me view and see people who struggle with mental health in a different light, because I learned from someone who sees it in a different way.
Yeah.
And on and on and on for the nurses and doctors and chaplains and social workers and teachers and everybody who's in, and parents and grandparents and neighbors and everyone who's in our community. By sharing life together, I hear how people are loving, and it helps me and it helps me think about how I can love more. And we can't do it all by ourselves. But I can do it better by being a part of this community, because people think about things like, um, let's have some bags available you can have in your car that you can give to someone who may be homeless. And so then I can grab one, and someone has helped me do that. And so I don't have to do everything by myself. So the gift of community for those who need to be welcomed in the community, and the gift of community for those of us in the community who need to continue to learn how to go out further and further and further, as God's expanse of love is beyond where we can ever go.
It's great. Perfect. I think it's right. It personalizes it. A lot of times being in community personalizes something.
Yeah.
It's easy, uh, if I have if I'm around people, I have a relationship, and it connects me in some way that if I'm frustrated with you, Amy, I can come to you and tell you that.
Mhm.
But I also know I know stories about you. So if you're, I mean, if your whole family's sick and you come in and you're tired, I know why you're tired.
Mhm.
Or
Right.
if something if your daughter wins some award and you come in and you're happy, I can rejoice with you. So
Mhm.
we weep with one another, we rejoice with one another, we bear each other's burdens, and we celebrate when good
Mhm.
things happen. And
Yes.
that's what the community looks like.
Yes.
It is about the relationships we develop. And when one wanders off or when we lose something that's valuable, we
Mhm.
recognize that we've lost something valuable and
Mhm.
we seek to draw it back in.
Mhm.
For the first parable, it involved risk, as you said, risking going
Yeah.
out and
'Cause you could
having
lose
a
10
conversation.
more or
You could
90
lose 10
more.
more
Yeah.
because you're focused here instead of focused on the 99.
Mhm.
And the 99 gets a little frustrated when you stop focusing on them because they're used to it.
Right.
But
Right,
if
right,
you're going
right.
out to reach out to a new group, then oh wow, that's that's a risk
Yeah.
because it might make you're right, it might make the 99 unhappy.
Yeah.
But there's also the diligence that comes out in the second parable.
Yeah.
She searched over and over and over and over because she knew
Mhm.
something was missing.
Right.
And so if God is the one who is willing to risk, but is also the one who is is persistent.
Mhm.
And what I like about both of these is when they're found, there's rejoicing.
Yes.
There's
Yeah.
not, oh wow, finally.
Right. There's not
Or
scolding, there's not
not scolding.
exasperation, there's not, "Let's just move on and pretend this didn't happen."
Yes,
There is rejoicing
there's
and
rejoicing. And as you said,
yeah.
learning. I think that's a
Yes.
part of this too. Um,
Yeah.
because this falls right before the prodigal son story where there's
Mhm.
another finding and rejoicing.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that over and over, we forget how often the Bible calls us back to celebrate and rejoice.
Right.
Sometimes at the little things, sometimes at the big things.
Mhm.
So, how do we find ways to do that?
Yes.
How do we
And
move
and
away from
partic
grumbling and toward rejoicing?
yes, and particularly in these 3 lost parables, the rejoicing over the individual. And
Mhm.
so I would so let's take that as a challenge this week and how
Yeah,
can we
so good.
and let's focus on some one-on-one. What are opportunities that you have at church, at other places, just to let someone know their value and significance in their presence?
Mhm.
Looking as we talked about earlier, looking in the eye, I am glad you are here, not focusing on and not seeing beyond, but just the individual
Mhm.
value in each person.
And with that, I encourage people to meet some new folks we have around the church. If you're
Yeah,
around the church, we've got some wonderful new folks
we
that,
do.
came during the COVID time and
Mhm.
so are still, kind of finding their way around the
Yeah.
church.
And
And
or who just kind of live and function in separate areas and the opportunity to at a Wednesday night
yes,
dinner table or
yes,
volunteering and joining a new group or new ministry, all of a sudden new relationships are formed. And I see that over and over. And I had the opportunity last night to introduce 2 people who have been here for years, but who didn't know each other because they're different Bible study classes, different circles, and then during the pandemic have been apart. But hey, y'all need to know each other. And it was just
yeah,
fun just to sit in the hallway and talk and help make those relationships.
that's right. So this is a lot about relationships
This is a lot about
and it's
relationships.
and it's reframing how we see one another
Mhm.
and making sure we know each other has inherent worth and dignity no matter what label society has put on them or the
Mhm.
church has put on them, and that we welcome the stranger, we welcome the lost, we welcome whomever
Yeah.
comes into our midst because we proclaim the sacred worth of all people.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, I have one final question that I'm going to
Okay.
ask you.
Uh oh.
Um And I've already answered it. So, and the question is, and this would be, I think, a really interesting, if you're teaching this passage this week in your class, or if you're watching this with members of your family, it may be when you're done with this to have this conversation. Um, and every time you would ask me this question, my answer would be different, based on the day. Who or where do you see yourself in the story? What
Mm.
character, inanimate, an animal, a person, where do you see yourself most today? For me today, as I read it, I really related to this woman who is like frantically looking for something that she's lost. Um, and so, Tommy, who or where do you see yourself?
I may go to the first parable a little bit more. I think trying to figure out, you know, where's, you know, again, the pandemic was difficult for
Yeah.
a lot of people. There's still some people, I believe, that are, uh, for better for worse, have created different habits,
Mm-hmm.
and they're just now trying to figure out what are the things that are valuable to them.
Mm-hmm.
What are the things as they're going back into a new schedule?
Mm-hmm.
What matters most? And so I'm wondering how we might, reach out to people to say, let's put some priority on
Yeah.
your spiritual formation.
Yeah.
Not just your education is important, family's
Mm-hmm.
important, all of these things are important, but where are you placing priority on growing in your faith, your love toward God, others, and yourself? And
Mm-hmm.
I think trying to find those that are moving out, I think sometimes it's just because people uh, are feeling the chaos of everything. It's hard for them to just kind of sit down and refocus.
Yeah.
For some people, I think they have some questions that haven't been answered,
Yeah.
and I want to be able to be the to help them answer those questions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think because of sheep, I wonder if this sheep left because it thought the grass was greener somewhere else. And a lot of times people go out and they realize, oh wait, the grass was not greener. I haven't found a place. I'm still at home.
Yeah.
And how do we welcome back people
Yeah.
that might need a place to kind of reconnect, to reconcile, to I don't want to call them sinners or tax collectors. I just want to say
Right.
these are folks that have been um, kind of displaced. We'll
Yeah.
put it that way. And now, how can
Absolutely.
we come back to a place that loves them and cares for them
Yeah.
and hears them? We're all gonna, but you're coming into to the church, and the church is people. The church is not an institution primarily. It's
Mm-hmm.
the people that make up. So we all have different thoughts and opinions, and so
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's hard to connect.
Yeah.
But that's something that's important for us to do,
Yeah.
um, to learn how to better love.
Yeah.
So it becomes less about me, but how do I love God and love others when I'm here
Yeah.
and by my presence?
And this passage, I think, really helps us do that because as we look at it, sometimes we're the one sheep, sometimes we're one of the 99 sheep,
Yes. Yeah.
sometimes we're the shepherd. And it depends on just where we are that that day or that season. Sometimes we might relate to the tax collectors and sinners. Sometimes we might connect to the Pharisees and scribes, and that calls us to think about um, things that we need to write or change. And so this
Mhm.
this passage just specifically names so many places where we may find ourselves. And so I think exploring that without judgment about where one may find themselves, because again, I have been the sheep, I've been the shepherd, I've been one
Doing
of the
everything.
99. And um depending on the day, sometimes I've been the coin, today I'm the woman. And so I think this, but in either place, no matter where we find ourselves, it calls us to think more, and it calls us to love and community. So this passage is really rich with possibilities, and I hope that you will just ponder it and keep it in your heart this week, and really do think about, finding a person or people just to say, I'm glad you're here.
Glad you're here.
And
Start
help
simple.
them know their value to you, to your workplace, to our church, to your neighborhood, to wherever you encounter them. It
And
is a gift to know that it is a gift for me to hear that I am of value to somebody. It is a gift for me to share with somebody their value of me.
so I think you're talking about creating a culture,
Mhm.
and I think we can create a culture of grumbling, or we can create a culture of welcome and encouragement.
And a
And the
culture of
more
beautiful
often we say,
belonging.
"I'm glad you're here,"
Mhm.
if you say it over and over, I think people pick up on it and they start saying the same thing.
Yeah.
And then eventually you hear it back and
Yeah.
and then everybody feels like we're glad they're here.
Yeah.
It's you know, we're only here a short amount of time at the church
Mhm.
each week, and then we're out into the world
Yeah.
and being the presence of Christ wherever we are.
Yeah.
But the church coming together helps us learn how to do that more fully so that we can
Yes.
even say to people wherever we are, "Hey, I'm glad you're here," or
Mm.
"Thanks for being who you are."
Yeah.
We see that with the people that check us out at the
Yeah.
restaurant, at the grocery
The
store, or
grocery
waiting on
store.
us at a restaurant, or
Mhm.
we recognize, hey, we're glad they're here,
Mhm.
um, and the gifts that they bring to us, and we're here, and we want to encourage them along the way. So creating that culture of encouragement is something that I'm very passionate about.
I agree. Beautiful belonging. We've been talking
Beautiful
about it
belonging.
for a year.
Yep,
Um,
no doubt.
so so let's continue to create that culture, and we will see you at church, whether you are joining us online or hopefully for those who are able, joining us in person. We look forward to being together for Bible study and worship on Sunday, and then again next Wednesday. Um, Tommy, tell us about Wednesday night dinners, just a really quick.
Yeah, I
Do we need
will.
to sign up?
It's
How does
best to
this
sign
best
up.
work? Okay.
The easiest thing to do, if you get the e-newsletter, there's a link in the e-newsletter. You can also go to the front page of our website and it says Wednesdays, and you click on that and it'll take you to the Wednesdays page to tell you what the menu is, what's coming up, and there's also a place to register for the meal. We're going to do that for a while till we get to figure out how many people are coming each Wednesday.
Mhm.
You can sign up for the upcoming Wednesday, or you can say, I'm going to be here most Wednesdays.
So just check the box. Yeah, and
You
so then
just
you
check
don't
the
have to
box,
do it
then
every
you don't have
week.
to
You
do it
just
again.
do it once and you're
Just
good
do
for
it
the year.
once. And
Yeah.
that's helpful for a lot of people. And you don't have to call every week. And if there's a week that you're missing, you don't have to
Yeah.
necessarily let
Yeah.
us know
And
that.
as we
You
got
just
started,
need
or
a general number.
if you forget to do it, don't let that be the reason why you don't come. Just come.
Yep.
We
Just come.
we have extras and
We do have
we want you here. And if too many people do that every week, it runs into a problem, but don't let that. I had
Yep.
a mom text yesterday. We didn't make reservations. Can we still come? Always. Um, so we look forward to being together. I just wanted to, because we traditionally haven't done that, but that's helpful for us in planning to have an idea of how many will be
Yeah,
here.
that's right.
So, and of course, if you get sick and aren't able to come, all of that
We
is fine.
understand all that
It's just
stuff. Yes.
helpful.
We're
It's
not going
just
to send you a bill.
absolutely. Yeah. So we look forward to being with you. And until we meet again, go in peace.
Peace.